Hey subscribers and watchers, what's up? It's me Vivs here from slidenerd. In this video, we're going to talk about how to implement dependency injection in Android with Roboguice. Before we start, there are two things that I would like to point out. One, if you go to Google and if you type slidenerd dependency injection, you will find nice post here where we have covered all the dependency injection frameworks that would include Butterknife, Roboguice, Android annotations, and Dagger in a practical way with examples. The last two articles are available on your email if you subscribe to our email list, on which you will receive an email that looks like this. It talks about the 4 videos with examples, the differences between each library, which library to use, what is optimal in terms of performance, and most of all, the code repository for everything on GitHub/slidenerd. So be sure to subscribe to our email list. So the simple idea behind dependency injection and Roboguice is something like this. You have a location manager inside your activity. Instead of you creating it every time like this, rather you simply write this annotation at the top which says @inject, and the library Roboguice will take care of giving you the right object at the right time. Now, what is the benefit of this? Well, the idea is this: don't let a class create objects on its own. Instead, let them take objects from a third party, and you can exchange these objects for test purposes. Perhaps when you're not live, you can use a dummy Twitter JSON feed, but when you're testing live, you can use the actual JSON feed that Twitter provides. So it's up to you on how you want to achieve and how you can switch things when using dependency injection. Now let's take a look at some more examples of this. For example, you can have MainActivity here where you write @inject, and you can pass the location manager object inside. Now this obviously is through the constructor, and this is not going to happen if you're using activities, right? Because activities are instantiated by the Android system. But if this was a separate class like a plain old Java class, then this would be possible. Into the field is what you just saw earlier, where I wrote location manager and I wrote @inject at the top left. And into a property would be where I have a method here that says set location manager, and Roboguice is going to provide me this object to directly set the value. Let's take a look at some more examples. So what can be injected? Well, Roboguice supports a lot of annotations out there. For example, there is Inject View, where you can pass the ID of the button and you can give the object directly instead of calling find view by ID. Same way, you can say inject resource, pass the drawable resource value here instead of saying get resources dot get drawable. And we will dig into a little more detail on what types of annotations are available. But most of you probably didn't notice that for Roboguice to work properly, you need to replace all your default classes with Robo classes. Now this is the part which I don't really like about Roboguice. For example, instead of activity, you have to go with Robo activity, Robo list activity, service, Robo fragment, and so on. There's quite a list of these classes if you see the documentation for Roboguice. Let's take some code samples and try to understand stuff. This would be the way you would normally write an activity where you have everything constructed inside the onCreate, right? Now change things with Roboguice. For view part, you can just say @inject view. For a drawable or a string, you can say inject resource. And for system services like location manager, notification manager, sensor manager, you can just say @inject here. Let's dig into each part in detail. Also notice the @ContentView annotation right here at the top, where I have set r.layout.main. Now this prevents you, or this replaces the set content view method which you see here on the left hand side to this one single line. You don't even have to write an onCreate if you don't need the saved instance state anymore. That's just how good Roboguice is. So again, text view find view by ID is replaced by @inject view, and you pass the ID inside. Now simple, right? Take a look at the drawable part. This was the most annoying part for me, where you said get resources or get drawable blah blah blah. You just wrote drawable.ic launcher. Look how simple that is. Take a look at the location manager. Typecast it, call get SystemService. Instead of that, just write @inject. And that's pretty good, isn't it? Now this is the list of all the things that you can get, and more on this list will be added if you take a look at the documentation for Roboguice, which may be updated compared to what you see here in this video. Now Roboguice also has this special annotation called @observes, which is for observing certain lifecycle events. Let me show you what that looks like. Now these are the classes that Roboguice provides. Again, this list may be different from what you see on your documentation because that is quite updated compared to this video, obviously. So there's like on create event, on destroy event. Let me show you what an example of this would look like. Let's say that you want to run some code when the on resume is triggered or on pause is triggered. You can simply write a method. You can call it anything, like do something on pause in our case, right, @observes, and then say on pause event, and then just have a variable for that on pause here. Now the best part about this is you don't have to write an on pause method, and more specifically you don't have to fill your on pause method with tens or hundreds of things. Let's say you are tracking location updates, you want to stop that inside on pause. At the same time you're rendering your camera preview on surface view, you have to stop that as well inside on pause. But by using this approach, you can have separate methods that, control the camera at one place, they control the location updates at another place, and that makes your code much more modular. Now you don't have to have a separate class like what is shown in this example here. You can directly make a method right here without even having this @inject at the top, and just write @observes on create event. Check out our example on Roboguice on slidenerd.com. One of the questions that every person, including myself, had when I started working with this library is, well, is it going to inject a new object every time? Is it going to just reuse the same object every time? Now that completely depends on something called scope. There are 3 of them. The third one is not written here. It's called Fragment singleton. But if you take a look at this idea, it's very simple. If you say something is a singleton, then once the object is created, that same object is going to be used everywhere, wherever you perform @inject. It is like the application object, which is truly unique in its representation. But if you take a look at this context singleton, then basically that means within the activity, when the activity is created, till the time the activity is destroyed, if you try to call the object several times, then it is going to be created only once. And if you take a look at the third one, which is fragment singleton, which is not covered here, it means when the fragment is created till the moment the fragment is destroyed. Let's say you have the class map adapter and you're trying to inject it 5 times. Only one of those injections would have an object created. The rest of them would simply reuse the same object. That would be the 3 different types of scopes that Roboguice supports. So there are some test results of running Roboguice on different devices, and some points that you need to keep in mind before you start using Roboguice. That would be about constructors, about dependencies, avoid cyclic dependencies. If you use modules, which is again covered in the example, then use them wisely, and be careful about input output and the responsibility stuff that you have. Again, if you want to know the difference between Butterknife, Roboguice, and the other libraries, that's right there in your email. So be sure to subscribe to our email list at slidenerd.com, and don't forget to Google us out saying Slidenerd Udemy, where we put up all our courses, our social accounts on Slidenerd Twitter, Slidenerd Facebook, and all the code examples right there on Slidenerd GitHub. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a nice day.